This is Harsh Rules. I'm Ben Harsh, and today we're going to learn how to play Dune Spice Harvest. Spice Harvest is a mini game that basically replaces the setup phase of the main Dune game. Basically, it's a card game with a strong bluffing element. The main objective is to position yourself so you have key strongholds and troops during the main game. So get your bits together, people. It's time to set up the game. Spice Harvest comes with 5 new cards for the main game. You want to mix those treachery cards in with the rest of your treachery cards. Step 1, each player is going to draw a planet card and put it down in front of them. Players will next flip over their planet cards to reveal which factions they will be playing. Step 2, you're going to take the spice from the Spice Harvest expansion and add it to the spice from the Dune main game to form the spice reserve for the Spice Harvest. Next, you're going to distribute 10 spice from the spice reserve to each player. In step 3, you're going to shuffle the harvest and access decks and keep the vote and share decks in order and put them on the playing space. In the next step, you're going to bid for the right of first manager of Dune. Each player is going to hold out their fist with the amount of spice they want to bid hidden in their closed hand. Then each player is going to simultaneously open their hands to reveal how much spice they bid. The player with the most spice becomes the first manager of Dune and pays all of his bid to the current runner-up. Everyone else gets to keep their spice. The winner becomes the first manager of Dune, and all the other players collect vote cards that say yes and no. Now let's look at the gameplay for how the first harvest report works. First, the manager is going to pay the Emperor 1 spice as per his Emperor special power. If the manager cannot afford to pay the Emperor, then he is replaced by the player to the right as the new first manager. The guild may also utilize their special power and sell the manager an additional harvest card for a fee of 4 to 8 spice. Remember, the guild cannot look at the new harvest card. The manager will then combine the value of both harvest cards to give the report. If the manager draws a worm card, then the Fremen can use their special power to assume control as the manager of Dune. When the manager draws his harvest card, he secretly checks to see what the value is, and then he must decide whether he's going to tell the truth during his report or lie. In our example, the Harkonnen manager of Dune will decide to tell the truth, and probably throw everyone off because they're used to him lying all the time. The manager then prepares a share card for each player and decides how much of what he's announced he's going to pay out. The manager, however, can distribute the spice with the share cards however he likes and to whoever he likes. The object is to figure out the best way to manipulate the players to suit your own ends and win the votes. Even if you decide you want to play as a fair manager of Dune, the cards are against you. You can only use as many share cards to divide up the pot as you have. In some instances, you cannot split the shares favorably. The manager is forced to choose which player or players is going to get shorted. But you've got to figure out how to do it in such a way as that you don't get voted out of the manager position. A quick aside, those of you that work in the corporate world may notice some eerie similarities to real life in this game. Anyway, each player will secretly look at their share card and decide whether they think the manager is telling the truth or not about the report. During this phase, the Atreides player can utilize their special power to look at one player's share card before making their vote. Each player will then place down their vote card, whether it's a yes or no, face down, and then flip the card over to reveal their vote. The manager will then reveal the harvest card, or cards, that they drew, and they will place the amount of the card in spice in the pot, along with additional 3 spice as an administrative fee. After this, a number of things can happen based on the results of the voting. I'll go through each scenario. If the manager wins the vote and enough players believe he's telling the truth, then those players can turn in their share cards for spice. The players that voted no, however, do not get any spice. If the manager loses the CHOAM meeting vote, then the no voters divide the pot amongst themselves. The manager is basically fired or relieved from duty, and the player to the right of the manager becomes the new manager of Dune. If the Harkonnen is the manager of Dune, then they can utilize their special power if they're caught, and this keeps them in the manager until they're caught a second time. The next phase is the bid for power. So you're going to auction off the number of access cards equal to the number of players in the game. In this example, since it's a 6-player game, 6 cards will be auctioned. So basically you're going to cycle through each player, and those players have 5 seconds to place a bid, or they can pass. Once everyone is passed, the player with the highest bid wins and gets the access card. You then continue the auction until all 6 cards are auctioned off. During this phase, the Atreides can use their special power to look at one access card before it is bought during each bid of power. The Bene Gesserit player may use their special power to look at all access cards that other players buy, and they may tell any players anything they wish about the observations. They may make their main game prediction from looking at these cards after observing the new opening positions on Dune. Once you've completed the bid for power, then you hold another harvest report and another bidding phase until you've passed through 5 of these. Now let's look what happens after the 5th harvest report. After the 5th harvest report, there's going to be a big swap meet, and each of the players can have a trading session to trade their access cards. If there is any leftover spice, the players do not get to keep it. It is returned to the spice reserve and then will be recycled into the main game. Now on to the final stage of the Spice Harvest expansion, and that's the troop placement in the main game of Dune. So get out the board from the main Dune game, and each player is going to place face down any access cards representing strongholds next to their position on the map. A quick reminder, the Bene Gesserit can use their power here as well to see the setup for the main game and make their prediction. A player may choose not to use his troops card and instead liquidate them for spice. Every troop that is liquidated is worth 1 spice, and you can see that at the corner of the troop card. I'm going to use the graphic above to show how these cards might have played out because it's easier to see. Each player will finalize their troop placement by calling out the strongholds in the following order, starting with Carthag and ending with Arrakeen. When the cards are flipped over, each player will announce their claim of the stronghold and how many troops they've committed to that stronghold. In the event that 2 players commit troops to the same stronghold, you're going to compare the troop sizes of both groups, and the larger group will win. However, conflict has its costs. The number of troops in the smaller army will be subtracted from the winning army. So that means the troops will go down from 12 to 4. Finally, each faction is going to collect their allotted amount of spice from the regular Dune game and then proceed to play the regular game as is. Hopefully that gives you an idea how the Dune Spice Harvest expansion works. Obviously, this expansion is designed for people that have played the main Dune game quite a few times and are fairly comfortable and knowledgeable about what the value of the different strongholds are. Spice Harvest does add a big chunk of playtime onto an already long game of Dune. However, Spice Harvest is entertaining enough that you can play it as a prologue session for a later game. And that about wraps up this episode. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm Ben Harsh for Harsh Rules, and I'll see you next time.